now if we go over to the cut tab, here they go. They populate our media pool. But you can see there's each of these things we can switch between. Oh, media pool, we can have titles and effects and all that kind of stuff. Personally, I actually prefer the edit tab down here, which we'll get to in a second, for all of these things. But here with a clip, if I double click on it, it'll appear right here. I can scrub through just like this. I can also hit play and watch it. And then if I want to use it, I can just drag it right down here onto my timeline. You can see if I drag, I can now scrub through and it's on my timeline. Here we have video track 1, and if I want to add another track, I can just click add track, and then I could even have another one of these on top of it. And anything on top will be seen first. So you'll notice here we're seeing this bottom clip, and then we actually jump over to the top clip. It's a bit close there, so you can't really tell the difference, but here we're moving there, and then we'll jump back because now we're only seeing the top one. So this is how you can add things like titles, subtitles, all that kind of stuff. You'll just have it overlay right on top. So I'll just delete that one real quick. And we can also scrub through here, and we can even click up here to select that specific clip. So we'll just delete this track because we don't need it. And now I'm going to jump over to my favorite, which is the Edit tab. Now the Edit tab, you'll see, has a lot more things, and some of these things are common with the Cut tab, but I just find it to be much easier to work with. So this is where you're going to spend most of your time. All of these things can be resized as you like, so you can have some things really small, some things really big. You can also up here toggle, so like this is the media pool on and off, this is the effects, and so if you turn those all off, you get much more space here to edit. You can even turn the inspector off and just leave yourself with the timeline and the view. Personally, I like the inspector. We're going to talk through that in a second, and we'll be using the inspector a lot. And it's also nice sometimes to have your media pool here. You can drag that over so that you can drag clips in. So what I like to do is I'll double click here. Now we can see this clip. We can scrub through it and see if we like it. Maybe we don't like this one, so we'll go to this one. Scrub through, this looks good. So now we can just drag it right down here. And you'll notice it'll snap right on there. So I can now drag it and it'll snap again. And that is because we have this snapping turned on. If I turn it off, I now get really fine precision, but we might end up with a black frame right in the middle here. So when this clip ends, there's no clip, it'll drop to black and then pop up again. So most times you'll watch your snapping on, so that you can snap that right there, and you'll just have a beautiful clean cut transition between this clip and the next clip with no fade to black in between. You can also use this slider right here to size, sort of zoom in and out on your timeline. So if you want to do really precise editing, you can zoom way in, or you can zoom way out and see the grand scale of your project. And of course, this can also be resized, so you can see more of your timeline. You have audio tracks down here, so if you wanted to add some sound effects or music, you could drag those, and just like with the video, you can add a track here, mono stereo options, and then you can drag it right in there and drag your audio clips. We'll just get rid of this because we don't need it. And so now we're going to talk through a couple things. So first of all, we have you'll notice that these can be dragged in and out, and this is just basic trimming. So one thing that's really cool about Davinci is if you cut or trim, it's all non-destructive, so you can get it right back. In other words, if I take this clip and I take away from the beginning a bit, I'll take this clip and I'll take away from the end a bit. Now I'm going to butt them up next to each other. Well, what's really interesting here is if I zoom in and I grab both of these like this, you can see the little white range is the actual range that I can move this connection. And so if I move it to the left, it's going to be adding to this clip and subtracting from this one, or moving to the right, vice versa. But I have this range to play back and forth because it hasn't actually gotten rid of any of these clips. You can also, if you're hovering over, you can go ahead and hit Control B to split the clip right at that keyframe right on the timeline marker. And so then you can just go ahead and click one to delete it. You can always Control Z to undo. One thing that should be noted is both delete and backspace work, however they do slightly different things. So if I cut it again here, if I select this one and I hit delete, you'll see it brings this one back to close the gap. This might seem like a good thing, and sometimes it is, but as you begin to have projects with more clips going on, if we drag this one right in here, and if I actually delete this, sometimes it won't move anything, but sometimes it'll actually move this top clip along with it. And of course now it's not going to show that. But just know that sometimes it will make everything shift over, and so you can actually lose timing that you had set up for your music or your sound effects or whatever that may be. So the other option is just delete, or backspace, and that will just get rid of it, and then you can slide things as you want. So you can play with those, and in some cases use one, in some cases use the other. It's up to you. Final sort of notes here. You can also this little toggle right here is going to be toggling on and off all of your effects that you make in the Fusion tab and the Color tab, and we'll talk about those in the next videos. But you can also go ahead and switch what's up here, so if the video also has audio, you can look at that in the inspector. And then there's even just a few more options here for markers and things like that. So next we will look at the Effects tab real quick, and then move over to the inspector. So the Effects tab here, right now we're in Audio Effects, but we can go over to Video Transitions, and this is going to have a whole host of pre-made video transitions. So if I drag across Iris, you can see it'll snap to either the beginning of this, right in the middle, or the end. We'll just have it overlaid on both, and you can drag it to change how long it's in effect for. And so if we just go ahead and watch this in the preview, you can see it does that cross split just like that. And so there's just a whole bunch of these, and you can play with these and see kind of what things you like. A lot of these you've probably seen in movies before. So this is like a basic pan left, where it's just going to transition from one clip to the other. There's also audio transitions, so if you have audio clips, crossfade +3 decibels will make it get louder, -3 will make it get quieter, and just regular crossfade will just crossfade between them. We also have titles here, so if we want to add text, we can drag a title in, click on it, and now in the inspector, we can actually change the words. We'll say words, and it will now pop up right in here. And it's actually trying to mask that at the moment, because it is this background reveal one, but if we just bring in a regular one, and there you see I hit delete, and we actually got the whole thing to move. Do that again. Right here I hit delete, and it actually got rid of a large part of this clip. That's what I was talking about before. So that's where you would just want to click backspace so it doesn't move anything else around. And so here we just have basic title, and you can see it just overlays right on top of that. And so here, this is a great transition over to the inspector. So the inspector is fine-tuning the settings of whatever you're on, whether it be a clip, or a transition, or a title, or other effects, audio, whatever. So here we have different fonts that we can choose. As you would expect, we have color, so that we can just change the color of these things. Oops, I selected white once again. Okay. And we have size, and we have tracking, which is the spread between the words. We have line spacing, so that's the spread between the lines. We can do different font things. This is sort of your generic Microsoft Word type stuff. Position is just going to move it X and Y, left and right, and then zoom in. Of course, we can zoom in and out. This little thing means that they're linked, so it's going to zoom X and Y together. If you unlink it, then you can just stretch it in the X or stretch it in the Y, however you see fit. Also, all of these little things here mean that they can be keyframe set. Some of these are only going to be the same, but for things like zoom, if we go ahead and hit, these are just to reset it. We'll back up here to the very beginning of the transition, and I'm going to hit the little keyframe button. Now I'm going to move forward, and I'm going to change this zoom to here. And you'll see now it has 2 keyframes that we can jump back and forth between, and it will automatically animate between those. So if I click play now, words is going to grow right up to that keyframe. And then maybe here I add a 3rd keyframe where it gets really, really tiny and disappears. And so you can see this is a quick and easy way to make an animation. It goes up and then disappears out of sight. And just a few more basic things here. We've got the rotation angle of the text. So if you want it to spin, notice this is also keyframe compatible, so you can have text spin, and then you have these other things like a drop shadow. So you can just have it sort of offset here, and that gives it just a little more depth and sort of contrast to it. Change the opacity, all of these things that you would expect. Next, if we pop over to video, you have a very similar slew of settings available here in the inspector. And a lot of these are also keyframe compatible. So we have zoom, which will just zoom the whole clip. We have position, just like before, rotation, all of these things are pretty standard. We also have anchor point. We're not going to use that now. Pitch and yaw are going to bend it in perspective like this. So if you're trying to get it to match up with, say, a wall, you could use that. You can flip it left to right and up and down. Then we have this cropping tab here so that we can crop in from the left or the right or the top or the bottom. And these are also all keyframe compatible. You can turn off a whole section like this if you don't want to use it. Dynamic zoom will allow you to sort of zoom into the clip here, and it will just sort of slowly zoom in. It's a nice effect if you want that cinematic effect where it changes from, say, 4:3 to 16:9 or 9:16. Then we have speed change, so we can just go ahead and change the speed right here, and notice the clip will shorten because now it isn't long enough. The difference there is if you slow down the speed, the clip length stays the same, but it can actually be longer now. And so if I make it really slow, then notice the clip can actually be quite a bit longer, but it just won't do that automatically, whereas it will shorten it automatically. And we can reverse the clip, do a couple of things here. Stabilization. These are drone shots, so they're already really, really stable. But if you have some unstable footage, you can pick stabilize, and there's 3 different options here. Perspective is going to try and shift, rotate, do perspective, all that kind of stuff. Similarity is just looking for sort of shifting and rotation, and then translation is just left and right translation. So translation does the least stabilization correction, and then similarity, and then perspective. Often if you try and do perspective on really bouncy clips, you'll end up with really strange warping that'll look bad, so then you can back it off. Camera lock is if you want it to appear as if it was a tripod. And so we can try and do that with this one. It may try and crop in. So let's see. With any of them, you change settings, you hit stabilize, and so let's see what it try and does, or do with that. So it can't do much because we're going like this, but if you have handheld clips that are supposed to look like they're on a tripod, you can hit camera lock and it'll just stabilize that in. Now on any of these, we have cropping ratio. That's how much it's actually going to zoom in to try and stabilize. Smoothing is going to make it so it doesn't zoom in like this. And then strength is sort of how much it's actually going to shift around. And so you can adjust all those, hit stabilize again, and then see what they do, and play with those. And I may do a video at a later time on how to fine-tune the stabilization. Lens correction is something that we don't have as free users. You can see it's just going to say, hey, you got to use the paid version. But that's okay. And then we have some retime settings here. But most of these things you're not going to use for most cases. So we can just go ahead and sort of slim these down. And our transform controls are the most basic ones. So that is the end of our basics on the cut tab and the edit tab. We've got titles here, we've got transitions, video and audio, and we've got the inspector and the timeline here. Hopefully that was helpful, and in the next one we're going to look at the color tab. We're going to skip over the fusion tab because it is a more advanced topic, and this is just a really, really shallow look into how to use Davinci Resolve. So I'll see you there.